Well, hey, I thought I would pop back on because I've mostly been coming on around 8 o'clock Eastern time most mornings. I just got up early this morning. And I noticed a lot of people who are usually on were not on. So thought I'd come back to teach you or share with you something that I learned growing up. Let's raise this up a little bit. There we go. So, I was talking about the quote that I have on my Facebook page this morning that says, see if I can remember it, that the birds of worry and care will fly over your head. This you cannot change. But that they build nests in your hair, this you can prevent. So I was talking about how there's always going to be worries and cares, right? But you don't have to let them make a home in you. So, lesson from my mother. A lot of lessons I learned from my mother, I gotta tell you, they're things that I learned not to do. In other words, she did certain things and I made it a point to avoid repeating those same behaviors when I grew up. And this is an example. And hey, this happens that we want to learn from a good example, but if we don't have a good example, maybe somebody doesn't know any better. They didn't have a good example in their life. Well, then you can learn not to repeat somebody's bad example. So, I'm not putting down my mother. She tried the best she could. And this was a valuable lesson I learned from her, which is, as she was getting older, she would worry a lot. She came, I think, from a long line of worriers. I think I told you that her mother, oh, good morning, Gary. Her mother, who was born in, I don't know, maybe around the 1880s or 1890 at the latest, she came over to this country on a ship in the early 1900s, and she was well educated, very bright, could read and write, but she didn't really keep up with what was going on in the world. For example, airplanes. I think maybe she didn't have a concept of the size of the world is all I can think of, and the number of people in it. Because she felt that if there was a plane crash that she would hear about on the news, and anyone that she knew or was related to had been flying on a plane or was going to fly on a plane, that was their plane that crashed. That had to be. It's just her mind jumped to that. She worried about a lot of things. Well, my mother sort of inherited that worry, and she did pass along to me some anxiety, but the parts that I can control, the worrying parts, I've got a pretty good handle on those. So this is an example that I'll give you from my mother's life. As she was getting older, and actually I think she was probably even in her 50s when this started. Let's say that she had something she had put in her purse. Maybe it was she wrote something down that she needed to remember, or, who knows. Anyway, she would get concerned that she couldn't find it right away. And maybe it wasn't still in her purse. Maybe she had put it someplace else. But she would tell me, I was up all night. I couldn't sleep. I can't tell you how many times I went through my purse. I just turned everything in the house upside down, trying to find whatever it was. And you could feel from her this sense of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, where is this thing? I've got to find it. And it might not be something important at all, just some little thing. But she would kind of get fixated on it. And I said to myself, I don't want to become like this. Why? Because she's obviously miserable. It's like she's torturing herself with, where is this thing? And so here's kind of the lesson in it. How did I avoid becoming that way? Well, I know that there are some things that happen in your brain that you don't really have control over, or they take a lot more to control than just the executive function in your brain and your prefrontal cortex saying, okay, now wait a minute. Let's calm down here. Sometimes you can't say that to yourself because there's other stuff going on in your brain and you have to write it out. Anyhow, I won't, go into that. But I realized that if like the first time that I couldn't find something and it was before bedtime, maybe something that I can't remember what it was now, something I needed for the next day, for school or for work. I just took a deep breath. Breathing is so helpful, isn't it? It can be. And I said to myself, okay, there is nothing to be gained. Yeah, it's like I talked to myself. There's nothing to be gained from getting all whipped up over this. I'm just getting more and more tired as the night goes on, so my ability to figure out where I might have put this is decreasing. I need to just make myself go to sleep, and I will deal with it in the morning. And what I did is I made a habit of handling things that way. Or let's say if I, right before I was going to bed, I would think, oh gosh, I've got to figure out what to do about this situation. Oh golly, instead of thinking about it, laying in bed, turning it over and over in my mind, oh hey Tamara, what I would do is I would write it down so that I wouldn't, then in the morning wake up and go, oh no, there was something important before I went to bed. What was it? So I would write it down so I could think about it when I had time in the morning. And this has been a really valuable lesson to me. I mean, let me tell you, as you get older, a lot of things in life become simpler. For one thing, you just don't care as much about what other people think of you. That kind of tends to govern a lot of the younger part of your life. When you get older, you kind of start to get an attitude of, let them think whatever they want to think. It's kind of like you've learned already. People are going to think whatever they think, regardless of the facts or the truth of the situation. There are going to be people who like you, people who don't like you, regardless of how you act. And as you get older, you just kind of understand that, and that's not occupying your mind quite so much. But then you also usually have more responsibility as you get older. You have more things that you need to deal with in life. So it's really good to practice being able to handle a lot of things. Oh, Tamara says even family. Yeah, you have, if you are fortunate enough to have a family, yeah, you got a lot to deal with. If you're not fortunate enough to have a family, gee whiz, Medicare is plenty to deal with. Anyway, so I'm just joking because I have found when I call up Medicare, they're really helpful, amazingly so. Anyway, another topic for another time. But the thing is that we are all managing directors of our thoughts. And sometimes our mind wants to go someplace that we don't have the time or energy to go. We need to practice saying, okay, oh my goodness, was it in, oh, for heaven's sakes, the one with Scarlett O'Hara? How can I have a mental block about Gone with the Wind? Yes. And I think, doesn't Scarlett O'Hara say a lot, oh, fiddle-dee-dee, I'll think about that tomorrow. The ability to, oh, fiddle-dee-dee, relegate something to that and say, I'll think about that tomorrow. That is a really important ability, to be able to tell your brain, stop. We're not going there right now. We will do it, tomorrow or whenever. So back to the quote. That the birds of worry and care will always fly in the air above you. I'm not very good at remembering how this was worded. It's a Chinese proverb, I believe. But the point is that you don't have to let them build nests in your hair. In other words, you don't have to let worry and care find a home in you, because you can practice managing your thoughts, which includes when you're going to think about something. Not just what the thoughts are, but when you're going to think about something. And I have put this quote on my Facebook page before, which is, your greatest power, your greatest ability in life, it's the power to choose one thought over another. So remember that today. You are not a slave to your thoughts. Your thoughts are there to serve you. And that not only includes what they are, but when they happen. But you got to practice, okay? You can't say to yourself, oh yeah, I believe what Sylvia is saying. That makes sense. You've got to actually, whenever things come up, practice getting a handle on things, taking control over things, and not letting those birds build nests in your hair, okay? I hope that you have a wonderful day. Time to finish my coffee, and I'm going to make a second cup.